I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Hello, guys. Happy Monday and welcome. I want to give a big shout out to everyone watching on Rockfin and everyone in the chat on YouTube. Desba will be joining us in just a couple minutes, but I figured we'd go ahead and get started with Delilah. So today we are talking about Indigenous Peoples Day. And Delilah and I go a little bit back. We knew each other beforehand through the Populist Voice Network. And so obviously when I wanted to bring guests on, Delilah was the first one that I had in mind. So Delilah, can you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself and about your race in Texas?
Okay, yeah, thank you so much again, Sabby. I'm glad you reached out. So my name is Delilah Barrios. I'm running as the Green Party candidate for governor of Texas. I am Latina. I am also Indigenous, and it's really uplifting to see all of the celebration of Indigenous culture, Indigenous peoples on this day. So thank you again for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming. I want to ask this question because when I was thinking about Indigenous Peoples Day, I've been thinking about this for the past, I guess, like 2 weeks. And one of the things I noticed that oftentimes, like when we talk about race in this country, it's in terms of black and white. And a lot of times we don't get to hear from Native Americans.
Yeah.
And so I want to get your opinion about just the fact that changing the holiday from Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. How do you feel about that? And do you think that is it genuine? Do you feel that it's enough? What's your opinion about that?
Yeah, I definitely have some thoughts on that. I was telling my kids today when I was in school, when I was young, it was still Columbus Day, and they wanted to talk about Columbus. But when I talked to my relatives and my elders and people in my community, they were like, no, 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 and they just didn't want to get into the history of it. I had to do a lot of the history independently to kind of pick out the reality of the history, because it's a bit glossed over from what they still want to tell kids. And I think there's a big push from the right against like critical race theory, and they're so concerned with preserving this status quo of white supremacy in the history books, and I'm happy to see it being challenged. I don't think it's enough. Hi. I don't think it's enough to just say it's Indigenous Peoples Day. Just first of all, it should be every day, because we need to go back to those lessons to actually heal what's wrong with society and so many other things. So I don't think it's nearly enough, but I think we're on the right path.
Okay, well said. Desba, everyone, please welcome Desba. Can you please like introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Iat e she e desba. Na kainishle do troilni bashis chin do na kai alda dasha che do ashin dashanale. I am Dene. I'm also Indiana from Santa Fe, New Mexico. And if I need to turn my camera around, I will. I was just trying to fidget with it. Yeah, I'm Dene from New Mexico, and I just came from a local Indigenous event produced by Three Sisters Collective here in Santa Fe. So it was really an awesome event. My whole family was there. My daughter, my dog, everyone and their grandma, which includes my mom, was there. So it was a really good event.
That sounds awesome.
Awesome. So I was just asking Delilah about Columbus Day changing to Indigenous Peoples Day, and if if changing the name of the holiday in itself is enough, or if uh, maybe it is more of a form of performative acts. What's your opinion about that?
I think it's performative. A lot of things are. Just a caveat or, nota bene is just, I have my own thoughts on things, that are very personal. I'm working through how I see the world, how I see myself as a matriarch in how I'm trying to teach my daughter. I think that's the main way I try to see things. And I feel like it's definitely a performative act. I think a lot of things are. We've just been in one mode of doing something the same way all our lives, and that can be microscopic, even in the familial sense of the things that we just do normally day to day, and then we're, trying to transition, trying to change, the things the way they are. Maybe it's a bad analogy, but someone who's a transgendered, they're transitioning. It takes a while to go from calling your sister she, and all of a sudden boom start, and then you have to start calling them he, and it takes a while to get into the groove of like that's importance. But similarly, there is something that has always been there, that has been a part of that person. Indigenous people have always been there, and it's just not something that people are used to because we've been fed that this is the way things were, all our lives growing up, learning the Maria Pinta, Santa Maria, all these other things that we've learned as childhood, how to count, one little Indian, two little, I mean, these things that you just don't see as being necessarily all that bad initially for a lot of people. Some people were hip on it earlier and knew better. But for, I think, a majority of us, growing up under those conditions where this is how things were, some of us are still trying to hold on to those things. No, we can't change it because it's always been that way. No, things can always change. And that's the way humanity exists, is by adapting and by changing.
Well said. Um, I want to ask both of you about the land back movement that is going on. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for a second, because this is something I think a lot of people don't know about. See if I'm here. Okay. Land Back is a campaign that seeks to establish political and economic control to Indigenous people in the United States and Canada over land that had historically belonged to them prior to colonization following the Age of Exploration. The Land Back campaign is supported by members of Indigenous groups in the United States and Canada. The policy of returning federally held land to its Indigenous people has support from American legislatures. And I want to get your opinion about this as well. What are your thoughts on the land back movement that is going on?
If I may go first.
Yeah.
So my thoughts are that there's a lot of confusion about it, and a lot of defense about the term land back. There's very little research done most of the time, and I like to tell people, they're like, "Oh, do you support the Green New Deal?" And I was like, "That, if it were better," and also the Red Deal, because the premise of land back is not just a continental thing. It's every indigenous culture, especially in South America, where they've led the resistance for a very long time. It's not about so much property as it is about honoring the earth and living with respect to your resources, and with a community mindset to preserve and protect what we have. So there's a lot of confusion, but yes, we do support land back, and I would love to see that happen in the future.
Awesome. Despa, oh, I think she dropped. She might come back.
Okay.
Do you think that I'm glad you explained that, because I didn't know a lot about this myself. Like I thought I did. And I've seen like people say different things about the land back movement. In particular, there's a podcast that did an episode about it. And they were just talking about this just sounds like another hashtag thing. So I want to get your opinion about this too, Desba, about land back.
Sorry, I'm smiling because I don't know if you've seen Reservation Dogs yet, but I believe it's Black Horse Low did a really good episode on that. I don't know, we should ruin it. It's just, it's this couple driving by and just like, what do you think that means? Land back. And the guy says that. He's like, what do you think this means? She's like, I think it means what it says. Land back. It's like, do they mean like some of it or all of it? And it's just we have had some of it back. I used to work for the Navajo Nation in the minerals department, and I had to work closely with the other departments that were under the Natural Resources, Department of Natural Resources. And, I will definitely admit that I didn't know very much about territories. I didn't know much about treaties, and I still don't. I'm still learning. But, going back and seeing one of the workers there had made a PDF, a slideshow of, the giant, enormous piece of land that Navajo Nation had received initially. And then they're like, oh, sorry, we're getting a smaller portion because we found oil and coal. And it's like, oh, but we promised. So then they added a little bit more, and then they added a little more, and then they took a little bit more away. And then it just kept growing and getting smaller and bigger and smaller. And then I think Navajo Nation actually owns outright, just like a small little chunk, but a lot of it is just like held in trust. And it's like, well, what the heck is held in trust? And it basically is just the same way as you understand it. When someone is 18 and they're able to actually get the land back. And I think more people need to understand what like a trust held in trust is. It's not really even actually ours. And it's, this idea that you can say only you get this a little bit of space. I also think of Office Space, the guy with the stapler. I mean, it basically feels like that's what's going on. It's like you only get this little bit. We're going to push you off into the back. And, it's finally where the guys at the end, it's just like, hey, hello. And it seems like that. So it seems like a stupid question for someone to ask, well, what do they mean? Do they mean all of it? It's like, well, you came in here without even asking. And decided that all of this was yours. This idea that you can destroy and consume and take everything because it was discovered, without actually, it just, without having to go and say like, having some kind of actual real talk about this and like maybe then wanting to learn about the land rather than thinking that's something of a conquest for these people to come over and say what it is. And so it's not necessarily like, all this idea that we all don't like white people, don't hate it, this idea that decolonization is bad, colonialization is bad. But it's how it's done. It's the intention of that conquest of taking. So when you say land back, people think, oh my God, these people are vicious and well, why do they want it back? Well, because no one even asked. No one even actually sat down and had a conversation from the very beginning about what it meant to take care of the earth, what it meant, the medicine of the trees and the species and what all of that meant. And when they did, then, they tried to kill everybody and force the religion on them. So this idea that land back is like some horrible concept and it's just, it's unfathomable that anybody could want something back. It's because it was taken away from, not necessarily like away from us, but it's just, there was never a conversation. There was never anything peaceful about it. There was never anything that could have been a discussion or, hey, this is my friend. No, it was all about consuming and destroying and conquest. But yeah, that's the first thing I think of is land back. And I think that it should be forceful. It should be strong. And that's all it means. There shouldn't have to be any kind of explanation in any way. There never was to begin with.
Yeah, I think back to when they were pretty much like, okay, well, let's give Native Americans casinos and reservations, as if that was supposed to be enough for stealing their land.
Yeah. It's a capitalism and colonial mindset that still drives many of our laws and reasoning, and not just this country, other countries. That's really the root of the problem, because most native people, we're all different tribes, and basically that just loosely translates to your community and the people that you care about and love. But if you're learning our history, you're learning how to decolonize yourself and promote that movement, it has to start with the understanding that we are all sacred and we all have ties to this earth. We all belong. And it doesn't, and I think making it a race issue is just a defense mechanism of white supremacy, which has that gotten us? You know what I mean? We're at this point right now where we have fire seasons, and we've got fire tornadoes, and we've got we're running out of water, and the shores are coming up closer, and all of that could be solved with more respect and consideration to our resources and our people, which we're lacking. So we have to do that concept needs to be more widely accepted, and we need to have these discussions more and more. And I'm glad that you brought it up, because it's really important to me and my family and the people that I live. Like, we don't even think borders make a lot of sense. We still work with people when we need, what I mean, when we want to access things and we want to work and trade. So this whole idea that like, back to Columbus Day, we were told that our ancestors were the savage ones, but it was not our ancestors who did not honor their treaties and honor their words, and so it hurts, but it's necessary for growth and for us to be a peaceful people.
How do you feel about I want to talk about education in this country in reference to Native Americans, because I know that when I was in school, I was taught that the Pilgrims came here and they met with Native Americans. It was so watered down, the way it was explained to us. They came across Native Americans and they said, oh, well, let's break bread together. And that's how we got Thanksgiving, obviously leaving out the genocide part, just not even like really touching on the fact of how they came here and stole someone else's land. And I'm curious, I know Delilah, you have children. What are they teaching kids in school today about Native American history? Because, like, another thing that I was told when I was in kindergarten, they used to say, all right, everybody, let's sit on the carpet and sit in Indian style. And I think back to that now and I'm like, that was so wrong.
Mm-hmm. So again, with the systems of oppression, education and propaganda in young people is a very useful tool for the ruling class, because they want to remain in a good light in the history books. And luckily, I am very involved with my children's education, and we just do like online school, and so they're very well versed on our history. And if anybody tries to tell them, oh, that's not how it was, it was peaceful, they were friends, they know that that's not true, and they try to correct them and tell them there's more to that than what you're being told. Like, our ancestors could be peaceful, but we had to defend ourselves too, and it was more or less because of most native teachings view everybody else in the same level of respect. Like, what I mean, we're all humans, and we try to have compassion and consideration, and that was taken advantage of by settlers. And so I haven't heard the schools trying to push a different narrative. I think they've tried to make it sound more gentle, but that's, we know it for what it is.
Desba, I want to get your take on this too.
Well, I have a 9-year-old. I'm a single mom. I forgot that was the part of the introduction I was supposed to say. I'm an actor, writer. I studied geology in college at Amherst College, and I did something. Oh, Montessori teacher trained, but I never did my certificate. But I have a 9-year-old, and I remember growing up in school, especially since I'm here in New Mexico. I'm not gonna say it was like the best, But we did definitely have, like a Native American education. It wasn't like comprehensive. And it's interesting because I grew up here in New Mexico. We have 19 different pueblos that are all along the Rio Grande. Um, back before, anybody stepped foot that was from the outsiders came, there were hundreds of pueblos, all here in New Mexico. Now, it's reduced to 19. But I'm from the Diné Nation, Navajo Nation, just up in the Four Corners area, primarily New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah. And so I don't know necessarily all that. I got a chance to listen to my daughter's teachers during COVID because she was there. She's back in school now. And I know that the teacher did their best to introduce and acknowledge that this area is culturally rich in various different tribes. There's the Navajo Nation, and then there are the Pueblo. And I kind of nudged my kid a little bit. And I said, "Well, say you're Navajo," and the teacher was talking about the Hogan. And she's like, "No, no, no, leave me alone." She didn't want to be put on the spot. So we do have, dances. We do have like feast day. We have the students are sorry. The school allows for the students to be able to have an excused absence for like feast days and the religious holidays that are practiced in the pueblos, or if for any other types of cultural reasons that they need to be absent, they excuse those because they know that they're important and vital to the students, and there are so many different ones, and they know that it's a whole familial thing. This isn't school related, but even the hospitals here, not they will allow to have as many family members in the delivery room as you can fit, who don't, as long as you don't get in the way of the doctor. A lot of the tribes here have like this idea of taking the placenta and the umbilical cord. They allow you to do those types of things. There is a cultural sensitivity in various different places that you can find. People are aware of it. I think more so now than they were before when I was growing up. But I also try to make sure that my daughter knows a little bit more of the specifics. I just had a moment recently when we found the graves of the Canadian students, when it was bigger, the initial one that they found earlier this year. And I contemplated, do I tell her about this? And I decided I was going to, but I was going to try and do it in the best way that I could. She was getting ready to go to her Indigenous camp, and she was trying to she's like, "Mom, where's my Make America, Native Again shirt?" And so I was helping her. She's like, "Mom, where are my mocks?" And so I was like, "You're supposed to wear sneakers." She's like, "No, but I'm going to Indigenous camp." I said, "Okay." And it made me feel really good that she was so proud of going to Indigenous camp. She was a little bit upset that she was going there not to learn about dances and things like that. But there was just like a bridge for the summer. And I said, "Well, what's wrong?" I said, "Were you thinking that they were going to teach you to make a dream catcher?" And she's like, "Yeah." But I told her though, I said, "I'm so proud and glad that you consider yourself to be Indigenous." Her father is white. I said, because, there were people, and even now, I wanted to put it in context for her specifically. I said, back when grandma and grandpa were younger, I said, his sister went to a boarding school. And she's like, "Well, what's a boarding school?" And I told her, I said, "This is where they would take kids, and you wouldn't see your mom or your dad or any of your family for a really long time." I said, "Sometimes they would take the students. They would take them from the families without the mom or dad's permission." And I said, "So there was a lot of them." I said, "They took a lot of them. And some of them would run away." My daughter is like this fierce warrior. She's like, "Well, I would beat up the nuns, and I would beat up everybody, and I would get away. I would crawl out through the window." And I said, I'm glad you would." I said, "Some of them tried." I said, "And they would find them and they'd bring them back." I said, "And some of them," I said, "Sweetie, they found some bones there from those places." And she's like, "Well, what happened?" I said, "What do you think?" She said, "Did they just die?" And I said, "Yeah, they died without ever seeing their mom or dad ever again." I said, "And they died because they were proud to be Indigenous too, but someone was trying to beat it out of them, and someone was trying to kill them because they wanted to be brown." I said, "So it means a lot to me that you are able and you're proud of being brown and you are proud of being Indigenous, because there are some grandmas and grandpas who lived through that, and there were some little kids who were your age who could never be a grandma or a grandpa because they're still there. So you be proud of who you are. And I'm so happy that you see yourself that way." So because there were some little kids who were tried and they couldn't. So I try to educate in those ways, as much as I can, to give her the truth, but also not so much that I'm saying too much. And I don't depend on the schools necessarily to educate my child, because I feel like that's my responsibility to give the truth and to also add or correct whenever I feel like there is something that is not quite appropriate.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that. Wow. Um, but see, guys, these are some of the things, these are some of the stories that you don't get to hear. It's really important that we hear from people who, especially time I said at the beginning of the show, a lot of times when we talk about race in this country, we talk about it in terms of black and white. And a
Yep.
lot of times we do not get to hear from Native Americans. And that is unfortunate. And that takes me to my next point, something that I've noticed in the entertainment business as well. There were times when I saw movies on television, old movies, cowboy, westerns, whatever you want to call them. And I remember Hollywood using actors that were white to play Native American roles. And I've seen this also happen with West Side Story is a big one where Natalie Wood portrays uh, Maria. Maria is Puerto Rican. Natalie Wood is not. I've seen this happen back with Asian Americans as well, where Jerry Lee Lewis portrayed an Asian character. Sometimes Jerry Lee Lewis was not Asian; he's white. And Desba, I know you've done acting as well. Have you run into any like difficulties in terms of auditioning for roles or um, being seen as like because you're Native American, maybe they want you to only play a certain type of role? I want to get both of you like your opinion on how Hollywood sometimes does not portray, I think, Native Americans in the right light.
Um, I'm starting out, and I'll give that. There are so many people who have fought, this fight way before I started, and they have seen the changes. I feel like in some way I might be riding the little bit of a wave in terms of like the roles that I've been able to get, and also just what I've seen the change like now currently. So I will say that, my initially I remember one of the casting directors here in New Mexico saying that, you might get into the door because, you got a Native American role, but then it comes about it's still about doing the work. It's still about being the actor, taking the classes, really trying to put yourself out there to after the fact. And that's kind of a little bit of a separate issue. Um, I've played a Lakota woman in Woman Walks Ahead. I had a small role there. I was in a little featured role in Hostels. I played an Apache woman, which isn't too far away because my great grandmother, some way back, her name was Mary Jane Apache. So there's somewhere in there, somewhere. Um, and so I felt, pretty comfortable that I had also recently had a role as a Navajo woman. Um, and that one was a little bit more challenging in the sense that like I really wanted to get everything right. But as I'm learning with being in the production, you have the production and they have their vision, you have the director's vision, which might clash with the production, which might clash with the head makeup person or the head hair makeup person, and you have the consultants that they bring on board, and there's like, oh, we have whatever particular tribe consultant that they might be to make sure that there's authenticity. But they might give them their notes and say, well, this isn't what you really do. But the importance of having the consultant is that the production actually listens, because it's fine to have a consultant on set, but if the production actually listens, that's another question altogether. And it really is up to the producers to say, no, we want to make sure to get this right. I won't say anything particularly on any show that I've worked on, but I've seen it where I've had a director ask the consultant, well, are you sure you wouldn't do this afterwards, or would you do it before? Because I want to make sure to get this right. And he genuinely wanted to get it right. And I could feel the tension of all the Native people listening to the conversation, especially the background people, because they know, we know what the authenticity of something is. And we're like holding our breath, like, is he going to say yes? Is he going to say no? Is he going to go with this? And he's like, okay, well, then we'll do it that way. The way the consultant said that this was the right way to do something. And there was like all of a sudden this like, finally someone is listening to what we have to say. But you can have any number of consultants or anybody on set or anyone saying this isn't what we want, or this isn't, you wouldn't normally do this, or this wouldn't normally happen. But if the production isn't willing to listen to what the consultants have to say, that's where you're going to lose the authenticity. I think with certain particular shows that you see nowadays, you probably have greater listening and actually going through with it, can't think of the word, because the producers themselves are Native. They know the importance of having that authentic voice and what things mean when the audience sees that something is done right. I understand totally as a writer, there's this idea of creative license, as far as like, well, we might be able to change this just a little bit, or you don't want to give away too much because you can't tell a whole story, the creation story, this particular element of this, you have to keep it away. You can't say this thing out loud because then that's taboo. And they won't do it, right? You might say something that might be a little bit different. And so that's not quite exactly what you were saying, but I just see, currently as I'm on set, that it's getting better. It has been better, but I haven't been there from the beginning when people were really fighting for these things. I do notice that a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to cut my hair because that's going to limit my roles. I don't want to get a tattoo because then, it's going to hinder my roles. But I also want to be, well, am I being authentic to myself? Because I love my own Native long hair, or I feel like I want to buzz it off at some point, and you know what? They're just going to have to wig me. And that's just going to have to be okay, because my true authentic Native self is going to be what's important to me. And if that means it's not going to be a role, then that's not going to be a role that I'm going to get. But I think that, trying to get yourself in the door, a lot of people sacrifice certain things. Like they don't want to cut their hair. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do certain things. But I know that I feel like I'm the wrong person to ask about, like the struggle that was before. I see that currently now, there might be some people that I know who are Asian and they pass themselves off as being Native, and everybody loves them because they wear the turquoise, and they wear it well. But, I personally, have had like just one time I did show up to work with my tziel in my hair, my Navajo bun. And they're like, okay, well, you don't want us to touch your hair. And I said, no, I'm good. And that was that, but it's because it's a certain point where, I wasn't background. I was actually like the SAG actor. And so I kind of was able to do that. But I know if I had been in a more, if I had been on a different set, they might have been like, no, we're going to put your hair down in a braid. I'm like, no, that's not what a Navajo woman would wear. It would be in the tziel and it would be this way. But and if I let my hair in a braid, that's because I chose to, because I wanted it that way, because I felt like it was okay. But I also feel like it's about agency too. Another actor, a seasoned actor, a veteran actor who I adore, one time is like, what do you want in this? And we'll see if we can figure out how to make this happen, because you are the person that's in this role, and your voice and what you have to say is important. And that they wanted that to come through in the acting. Because if I wasn't okay with what I was saying as that as the native actor, as the native character, so it's two different things, then that too was going to be, there was going to be a mismatch. Myself as a native actor has to also meet with that native character and know that, things are driving between that. Because I'm not only just like representing myself as a native actor, I'm also representing the native character. And I want to make sure that that is going through. A lot of native actors will do, and I see that too with non-native actors, though, and I really feel blessed to work with those people too, the allies, who really try to get the pronunciations of the various different languages correct, whether it's Lakota or Navajo or Cheyenne or Haudenosaunee, or Creek, Muskogee, Wajaji, Osage. They really want to get the authenticity of that accent. They really want to learn. I can tell how hard they are working and taking notes. And my heart goes out to those actors, whether you're native or non-native, and you're really working to get the pronunciations of those native languages right on camera. And I thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Delilah, I want to get your take on this.
Well, I mean, I'm not in the industry, as it were, but I have seen the push from the public to be more inclusive and more actually representative of the characters in these stories. You know what I mean? A great story depends on how it's told and how true and how believable it is, and I think that it's really important to and it's not even, I'm sure there's a lot of competition, but I think it's just the best honorable thing to do to save space for people who are representative of those people, of those characters in your stories. Just from growing up here, like there's a lot of competition sometimes with people. Like some people were like, oh, they want to out Indian you, or they want to be, more authentic, but you know what I mean, just because it benefits them in some way or it doesn't, versus, you know what I mean, like it doesn't matter to me, you know what I mean, like I'm not in competition with anybody. I have, the people that I was taught from, that gave me the lessons that I needed to actually honor my ancestors and listen to them and be part of the future, and to be part of just existing. You know what I mean? Like it's already bad enough that we're here. We're not supposed to be here. We were supposed to be erased, but we weren't. And so I think it's very important to consider those people are still here, and they shouldn't be overlooked because you want to make it look nicer, or you think that shadism should be involved in your roles. I'm glad there's a big push for change like that right now.
I want to get your opinion on, hold on, let me scoot this up. Sorry. Had a little technical thing here. Okay. I want to get your opinion on what issues you feel are important for Indigenous people in this country. And if you feel like these issues are being addressed, and if so, why or why not? We'll go piggyback with you again, Delilah.
So issues, I'm wearing my missing, murdered, and Indigenous, I don't know if you guys see it. Hold on. Do you see? Oh my gosh. There we go. So this is important, okay? The missing, murdered, Indigenous women message is very important because, again, like the boarding school in Canada, here in the States, there are many women and at-risk youth who are being subjected to all kinds of horrible things. And so there's like a districting issue the cops don't generally want to help tribes for things like that. And so I think it's very important to keep that that conversation going, because people are dying still. They're still being murdered and killed at a very high rate just because of their ethnicity and their background. So I want to bring awareness to that. Land back, obviously, as we already discussed. But you know, just today they arrested tribes members at the Capitol for peacefully protesting and trying to urge Biden to stop Line 3. And they, you know, I mean, none of this, none of our efforts are being successful in the way that we need to see them be successful. And I think a lot of that is because of lack of support from non-Native people. And we have to keep this struggle going and in the front of all of our solidarity and all of our movements, because the Indigenous fight is the fight for humanity, for all of us to even have a future. And so you know, anything that you can do to support Indigenous people who are working against these struggles and the oppression and the theft of land and theft of their people, just keep being good allies, because we need so many more than what we have.
Well said. Desba, what issues do you feel are most important?
I just want to echo what Delilah was saying. Definitely murdered, missing Indigenous women. You know, land back, pipeline 3. It's a lot. It's overwhelming to have a constant battle and fighting for these things, which are just plain niceness, happiness, joy. It's like just to be able to live. It seems so stupid to have to ask for or demand to be seen as a human being.
Yeah.
You know, just to be seen as being able to take up space. And you know, that a person could be important, that my daughter is just as important as anybody else, that, you know, she sees herself as someone who's important. My main thing, because that's my focus, is my daughter. With everything I do, it's the reason why I got my tattoo that my dad got angry with. Because every decision that I make with my life, you know, even if it was before, but even from here on out, has to be about her. My success that I make as an actor, to be able to have a wider platform, to be able to access more people, to be able to say more things, to be stronger as a matriarch. It's kind of almost selfish to say that my important thing is to make sure that I am doing the best that I can, and doing the best that I can for my daughter. But I want to make sure that she sees, I can't have her see herself as important, and that she can do whatever she wants, anything that she wants, that she's powerful, that she's a creator, that she is capable of receiving and giving love to everybody, that she can change the world. I don't feel like I can tell her that without trying to do it myself, without seeing how capable I am as a matriarch, without trying to have my arms as open as possible to as many people as possible, and at the same time have the firmness to set boundaries, to say you are not able to enter here. This is a sacred space, and you will respect me and my space. But I can't do any of that with her and have her do that unless I'm capable of doing that as well. But I try to help and support other people in small engagements, whether it's my friend. The reason why I was running a little late, I had this beautiful discussion with Taos Wildflower. Her name is Carmen. She's on Instagram. She's here in New Mexico. And we were talking about like not having those borders, you know, with between Mexico and the Indigenous here in northern North America. That we don't have those borders, that we see ourselves as one. That would take away any, I don't want to say erase, but that would help with the idea of this colonization, right? We were talking about that earlier. But if we're able to see each other with that compassion we wouldn't ignore the missing murdered Indigenous women. If we were able to see everyone with compassion, we'd be able to have enough resources for everybody. If we see everyone is struggling, we would be able to have enough love for everyone to help each other out. And that to me is like one of the big things of importance, is being able to see other people as compassionately, that they're trying to find happiness, that they are struggling to survive, that if I can take care of myself, then I am capable of taking care of someone else. And so that's my personal goal and my mission. And that's the important thing to me, is how can I actually be that thing that I'm talking about? How can I make sure that I'm checking in on my sister or my brother, making sure that their mental health is okay? I lost my cousin recently, and I couldn't put myself to be there always for her. But she basically drank herself to death. She lost her two youngest boys to suicide. And I just want to be able to not have those kinds of things happen anymore, because of the generational trauma, because of the hurt, because we don't see ourselves as being important and lovable enough. We need to see ourselves as capable, and we are creators. We can take care of each other, and when we can take care of ourselves. And we don't have to listen to the people who are saying, you're not enough. This is mine. I'm going to take it. You're not capable. You don't deserve it. We're taking because you are other. We have to see ourselves in other people.
Well said. Valerie brings up a really good question here. Thanks so much, Valerie, for this question. What are good ways to be allies? Let's go ahead and start with you, Delilah.
Well, I just wanted to say, offer my condolences to your friend that you lost, your relative. And I also wanted to thank you for bringing up the matriarchy, which is essential for a lot of tribes, is to have women leadership in the tribe. And I think it's very painful to hear and know and see so frequently that we're losing our relatives, we're losing the people that we love to things that are avoidable. You know, the generational trauma is very painful. I've had to do a lot of growth around that myself recently. I was taken away from people that I had grown up with, that I felt safe with, and I had a tribe, and I had people that were close to me, and I lost that. And just me losing them by proximity and moving far away caused enough, of a loss for me. So I know how bad it is to lose people, and so I'm sorry for that. To answer the question about how to be a good ally is to not make that separation, or have to come up with an excuse for why you're choosing to be an ally. Just know that it's the right thing, right? Because we're all on the same plane. We all have worth and value. We are all capable of so much, and we need each other to grow and survive and do better. So first thing I would, and it's this, we talk about decolonize yourself, decolonize, our systems of oppression, decolonize the structures that we live under as it is. And one of the biggest steps is for you as an ally to say, I don't have to make excuses. I don't have to write a thread on why I support Indigenous people. I'm just going to do that. I'm going to do that regardless of what people say, you know what I mean? And know that their fight was with my fight, and live, you know what I mean? Be that example of solidarity that is needed. So don't, there's organizations, there's people, you can do the research, you can just stay up to date on what people are doing. Indigenous fights are all over the globe right now. It's not just stuff, it's just not limited to the United States. So educate yourself, and be firm in your support for people, that this fight is your fight as well.
Thank you so much for that, Delilah. I think that's really important for people to know because we get that question a lot over at FHL. That's the question that comes up a lot: is how can you be an ally? What can you do?
Yeah.
Des, I want to hear from you as well.
I just want to echo that what Delilah says, and and at first I questioned it, just then I realized no, it is about just doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, right? That really just simplifies it so much. Um, I hate to speak in negatives. I know I just like some person was asking about, a long time ago. Well, I've been going to the feast, so I've been listening to everybody. He's like, when are you, basically what he was saying is like, when are you going to tell me your stories? I'm here listening to you. When are you going to open up? I've been in the part of the community for like, since I was a little boy. I've been coming back to New Mexico all my life. When are you going to share your community with me? Just like you are basically doing the reason why we don't share because you feel like you deserve to be included.
Mm.
And that sense of like deserving something. So, but how to be a good ally? Well, don't do that. You're not doing it for the merit badge. Yeah, it just really just goes down to just doing the right thing. To me, it's just the compassion because you don't want to see another human being suffering. That's how you be a good ally. That's it. Share the missing, murdered Indigenous women. You don't have to be on the front lines. It's great. Hold space for the people who are. Donate money. That's how to be a good ally. When you get like $5, $10, 10% of your salary, whatever it is that you want to whichever cause that you can to promote. Bring someone free out of jail. Provide, if you're a lawyer, provide some free services to people who really need it. You don't have to be arrested to be a good ally. You don't even have to be making signs. But the best thing you could do also to be an ally is just listen to someone who's saying, hey, who in an Indigenous or anybody of color was like, this is what I've been going through, and be like, thank you for trusting me by telling me your story. Because then you carry that. That's a seed. We have seed pots here in New Mexico that the Pueblo make, because it's obviously where you put seeds and you store seeds. And, take that little seed that you have of that knowledge that someone laid on you and allow the ancestors to speak to you too with what you want to do with that, how you want to join the community when they have someone's offering you a chance to be a part, to just listen, to just be. Maybe that might be the allyship they need, is just someone to listen. Someone to say, hey, you're obviously if there's your friends are doing like a thing privately or whatever, and they're like, oh, what are those Indians doing over there? Be like, okay, you might, this is private, they're doing their thing. Well, why are you here? This is private. Yeah, I don't know, but being a good ally, just listen and do the right thing.
Yeah. Well said, because that's, like I said, that's another one that comes up oftentimes. Like people want to help, but they don't know if they're going about it the right way sometimes, or they might feel like they may feel like they're stepping on that group's like toes. Because one of the things that I've talked about before, talked about this with Chris Richards, is that sometimes when people want to be an ally, they'll come in to help, but they end up taking over. So one thing I want to exactly. One thing I want to add is uh just don't come in and try to take over and make it your thing and make it all about you. Just saying.
That's a good point. Yeah,
Look
it's
at
a
me
lot
with
of it
all
is.
these natives. I am helping all these natives. I provide funding for them. That's great.
Yeah, don't make it about you, right? Yeah, there's a bigger story that we all can contribute to it. That should be enough, you know.
Mhm. Agreed. Now I know both of you talked about borders. I know you're in a border state, Delilah. Um, Dabaza, New Mexico, well, still touches border. Um, we have a problem with immigration in this country. And I saw recently what happened with Haitian migrants that were coming through the border and how they were treated. And something you really kind of like, both of you really kind of woke me up to is the fact that why do we even have these borders to begin with? Like, why do we have to be separated? And I never thought about that before. So I want to thank like both of you for like waking me up to that. I think it's just been so ingrained in us that we're the United States, and then there's Canada and there's Mexico, but I never stopped and thought like, why are we separated anyway to begin with?
Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't have an immigration problem, as you said, if we did not have colonialism and our U.S. military all over the globe disrupting people's ability. Most refugees, most migrants don't want to have to come here. They want to stay where they're comfortable, where they grew up with their families, and that ability to stay is being taken from them. And that's the legacy of the United States and our military efforts. We're not helping like we're being told we're helping. You know what I'm saying? And if we were helping, we would help others stay where they are and be good neighbors and be good friends and promote actual peace. So, obviously, the colonial mindset is this is mine. This is mine. You know what I mean? I'm going to take this, and you can't have that, and separate. That's the reason why, and it's a very selfish and greedy reason that we have to overcome those these constructs that don't serve us any longer. So like, for instance, I've got people who have come over from Cuba, and they did everything right, and they followed all the protocol, and they turned themselves in and requested asylum, and ICE has them anyway. They, even though they have everything in order, and it's just like their existence alone is a thorn in my existence because it makes it harder for us to be good neighbors to other people. And our current governor is a bigot, and he generally leaves opportunity for this sort of like dehumanizing behavior, like hunting people down or giving them up to authorities, or spying on them, and he incentivizes that behavior, and it's very harmful to me. I didn't choose to run because I thought it was going to be easy. I did it because I know it's important, because there's not going to be people in this state that are telling you that we shouldn't have ICE anymore, or we should be more helpful to other people. We need to defund the military and things like that. So, it's very close to my heart. Obviously, it causes me a great deal of pain to just be in this environment where you see it happen so frequently, that people are taken and disregarded, and in fact profited off of by being caged.
Mm. How did both of you feel about some of the symbols that we've had in this country for many decades that symbol is like it represents Native Americans, and it's used in such a derogatory way. So, like, for example, some of the sports teams have changed their names. Like, we knew there was the Washington Redskins, they're now the Washington football team. I believe the Cleveland Indians, I think, is also changing their name. I wanted to get your opinion on this and hear from you. These are things that I kind of felt were problematic growing up. I didn't think it was appropriate to have those names. How do you feel about that?
I don't like him. Don't like it. Yeah, I'm glad they're changing. And it's kind of the similar to with like the Columbus Day, like things people are like, well, it's been like this whole time. It's like, well, you didn't really clearly think about it too well, that this was not like a good thing, or you just didn't care. It's like one of the two, that you were too stupid to think that it could possibly be a problem in the future, or you were just, too much of a jerk. I don't want to say anything else. Although I could. To like care about what other people think about it. It's like one or the other. There's like no in between, and so then people just keep eating the same BS. For this whole time. It's like, well, you can't change it. Same thing with like why a woman has to change her last name when she gets married. I'm like, why do we have to do these stupid things? It doesn't make any sense in the first place. Maybe it did at one point, and now it doesn't anymore. Change it. What's the big deal? Just change it. And then they'll say, oh, well, what's the big deal if we keep it? I'm like, oh my God. You know, you can't change stupid sometimes.
Yeah, I would just echo. I think there's a lot of ignorance being pushed onto people, and lack of consideration that has been accepted for a really long time. You know, and I can't hold space for you to be uncomfortable about things. You know, like, oh, it's uncomfy. I don't want to deal with that, and also save space for people who are willing to grow, right?
Mhm.
Because if we want to hold on to those beliefs, you want to remain a bigot, we can't make those, we can't accommodate that, right? Because uh, the world changes just in the short time I've been alive. You know, things happen so quickly, and it's like, I don't know how there could be any pride associated to holding on to something that is very clearly wrong and harmful to other people. So I just, you know, I think more of this. You know, I would love to see the Black Hills given back to their to the Lakota. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is just the beginning of decolonizing, and it's for the better, you know, of everybody, really.
Well said. What advice, this is the last question I have for both of you, but what advice would you give to people who maybe they want to learn more about Native American history and they want to learn more about Native Americans in this country? What advice would you give to them?
Do you want to go first?
Go to the source. You know, read on authors who are native writers. You know, Joy Harger's our poet laureate, you know, twice in a row. You know, read her work. Find out more about, you know, how people prefer to be called, you know, especially, you know, we're trying to move away from, you know, I do it too because I'm so used to it. You know, like Santa Fe is Ogapoge. It's a Tewa word, and that's this original particular land that I am living on, you know, as a native Dene woman. Learned the different, you know, Aaron Capella, I believe, does native maps for North America, Mexico, I think even South America. He's doing great work with identifying all the different types of tribes throughout the year. So, you know, we migrated, but identifying the different places. He's doing great work with identifying the different cultures. You know, find out about all the different poets. You know, there's a lot of, go to the IAIA website, Institute of American Indian Arts. They have a whole list of authors in literature. My good friend Chelsea Hicks, she's coming out with a book next year. Tommy Orange is another person who's written work. Teresa Melot, she's done work. And Sherwin Basui, you know, go to the source, find the authors, find the people whose work, and that's my literary world, right? You know, find out who Sarah Teller Ornelas is. Find out, you know, I mention a lot of these names because this is my world that I live in. Find out who these different actors are. Geraldine Keams, you know, she's an amazing actress. I had time to talk to her. She laid down some knowledge on me, and it was such a blessed day. You know, find out who these ancestors and these elders are. You know, read up on Buffy St. Marie. I had talked to some random person. He said he's the reason that she's the reason Universal Soldier was the reason he dodged the draft. He went and shot down to Ecuador. He's like, I'm not doing this. You know, it's go to the source. Go to the source and find out more about these things. Don't just say, oh, well, I heard so and so. Actually, you know, go in and find out what it is. Why Osage, you know, was from Wajaji, was like this French word that was bastardized, and now that's the only way we know them. You know, and I would say some people maybe find this controversial, but yeah, maybe try to learn the language, or but find the source, find someone who would be willing to teach you. And if someone doesn't want to share, then that's okay. That's okay. Because in respecting someone who you ask, that's a good way of finding out more about where you're at. We were talking about I was at the hot springs the other day, and we ended up meeting with someone who was talking about the ecosystem of the learning culture, I believe it was. Find out what tribes were in your area, where you live, in New York, in Louisiana, in all the different places, all the different cities. You'll probably be amazed that the city that you're living in was actually some kind of Englishized, bastardized version of a native name, of a native tribe that was conquered. And, and honor that. And maybe be like, oh, well, instead of saying that you're from, Santa Fe or Okopoge instead, or, you're from Okewinge instead of San Juan. Honor those things. And it just takes one little step of intention of being truthful to learning more about these things by going to the source.
Well said. Delilah?
Yes, absolutely. I encourage people to look on the map. I cannot think of the website. There's a website where you can put in where you live now, and it'll tell you what native people lived there before and what the tribes' names were. And do a little bit of research. There's a lot of cultural centers. I know here in Texas we have we have like a few tribes that they have powwows, and they're very open, inviting to other people and teaching them. Obviously COVID's been a bit of a problem for the ceremonies, but just put in the effort and the intention to learn and to be open-minded about it, because it's not all, it's a little messy, right? There's a lot of pain and suffering involved, but that's not all of it. There's a lot of history that should be taught to everybody, adults, young people. Just don't stop learning, and just keep an open mind about things, because I think you'd be surprised that you might feel like you're part of the earth too. That's what I want for you. That's what I want for everyone.
Awesome. And Valerie is giving you a shout out here, Delilah. She said you have both our votes here in Texas.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Valerie.
Awesome. Well, thank both of you so much for coming on. I've learned a lot today. I think you've educated a lot of people. And we need to do more stuff like this, you guys. Like, for those of you who are watching, if you have a platform, we need to give voices to those who I feel we do not get to hear from a lot. Different groups that we don't get to hear from as much as we do other groups. Really quick before we go, where can everyone find you?
I'm at DelilahForTexas.com. I'm on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. So just say hi. We're here.
I'm Desba, so just DEZBAA on IMDb, Instagram, Twitter. I'm not very much on that very much. But yeah, it's where you can find me, or maybe in the movie theater next year. So
great.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming on, ladies. I'm going to hang back for a little bit and chat with them, but thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys. Hello. Really important discussion here, you guys. I think it's really important that you hear from people who, I see a lot of people talking about Indigenous Peoples Day and talking about what it means to be Native American, or what Native American people want. But I noticed a lot of times this was coming from people who were not Native American. So I just think it's important that you hear from that group. You hear from the people who have that lived experience, not from people who do not have that lived experience. I think that is very important. So thank all of you so much for watching. I hope you learned a lot tonight. Tomorrow, come back. I have a direct action story that is taking place tomorrow. Sharif will be here. He is one of the main organizers for the Medicare for All marches that we had in July. So he has another direct action that's coming up. So he's going to pop in for a little bit at the beginning, and then we'll do the news for the rest of the show. Thank you so much. And thanks so much, JB, to you also. Thanks so much. Elevating voice is important. Thank you so much, Sabby. Thanks, guys. All right, guys. Other than that, you know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.